get off on a better start than the first two games in this
home.
Oh,
hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Coming
Paul Edmonds.
On the end of a road
yeah, can you hear him?
Yeah, I can hear him. What's that coming off of?
I'm not quite sure where. Here, you take the lead on this one. Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Great to see you. You take the lead. I'm going to exit out and bring me back in.
Okay, sure, for sure. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. The NHL is back in action after an incredible week and a half with the Four Nations face-off in Montreal and Boston. I'm Jamie Thomas. Sara Lesky will be joining me here momentarily. We've been waiting for the Winnipeg Jets to get back in action. That will be happening tonight in St. Louis against the Blues, and it will be without Connor Hellebuck and of course Josh Morrissey, who both I believe flew home yesterday from Boston after a tremendous final in the Four Nations face-off. We had everything we were looking for in that tournament. It was amazing. I can't even describe to you what the atmosphere was like without doing it justice, but it was something else, and they all did a great job. I'm talking about both Montreal and Boston, and Sara Lesky joining us now from – that's some nice artwork back there.
The Gremlins.
Hotel room?
I see people already saying that the Gremlins are out in full force right now. They certainly are. You know, we can't ever get enough of Paul Edmonds and Mitchell Clinton, so we figured I don't know where that was coming from, but I hear a little bit of you starting things off, saying about how you were coming back from the Four Nations, which it's great to see everybody back in the chat already and getting ready for today. And
I know.
And unfortunately, I mean, you spent that break in Montreal and Boston. And it's such a shame, JT, that it did not live up to the hype, huh?
You know what the worst part was? My wife said it was like, you just got back from your vacation, so it's your turn to take over. I'm like, there was nothing vacation about that whole thing. Like it outside of Tuesday and Wednesday, waiting for the game to happen. And of course, all the pregame hype for the championship game. That was the only time I really had off at nighttime. Other than that, I was traveling. I was going to the rink. The 8 o'clock, well, not 8 o'clock start. It was Liz's 8 o'clock start. Stop the crying. I know you're getting emotional. Don't let the makeup run. But the 8:20 start was like so bad. I would get back to my hotel at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was tired. It was so great. It was so great for hockey. I know the Kachuk brothers are not well liked right now, but man, did they do a great job of selling the game. Like it was, I know they played for the Americans and stuff like that, but they did a great job. They were the hype men for that first game in Montreal. And I get so excited when I think about the opener, because when Mario Lemieux came out on the opening night and when Canada played Sweden on the 12th, I couldn't believe it. Like I never thought in a million. I haven't seen Mario Lemieux live in forever, and it was tremendous. So and then when the Americans, we don't have to get into fights. Like I could talk about this tournament forever. But the sad part is, one, Connor Hellebuck. I know majority of our fans are Canadian, but it was sad. Connor Hellebuck was devastated after the game. I got to chat with him afterwards with other members of the media. He was devastated. It was very, very quite visible. That was tough to see. Also tough that Kyle Connor didn't play.
Yeah.
Outside the fact that he leads all American-born players in goals scored this year, not a big deal in a game where you need offense. So he just never seemed to find a place after being taken off the top line. And that's not on him. That's, the coaching staff has to find a way for him to be successful. And then last but not least, like how tough is that for Josh Morrissey to be there on the cusp of playing in a championship game, and then you wake up from a nap not feeling well, and you don't even get to be part of the championship celebration either. So I feel for all three of them, but they represented the Jets extremely well. They played well throughout the tournament. JMO, I thought, was amazing with Colton Parayko. He had to fill in for Cale Makar against the Americans when Cale Makar was sick. That's the other part, is all the sickness that was running around everywhere. But unfortunately for Josh Morrissey, too bad for him to not be able to. But he is a Four Nations champion, and probably has booked himself a spot at the Olympics in Italy coming up next February.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that. I like the way that you're laying the groundwork about how everyone's been really sick that was out in Montreal and Boston, so that so Monday, JT maybe messages and says, "It's just."
When the Sharks are in town, I might be sick. I don't know.
Very smart. Great to see so many of you in the chat already. We see Huss is there as well. who was out in Boston and
Oh,
able
can I tell a story?
Okay, go for it.
I have another story. So I got off the media bus to go to TD Garden for the America Canada Championship game, and lo and behold, there is one hustler in the streets with Dusty Nielsen and another friend of theirs. And I was talking to them. They're in their Canada jerseys, and they got yelled at relentlessly. I heard 51st State so many times. And I'm like, I don't think I could be in the crowd for this game tonight. I think I would snap. But I do appreciate the one guy that was in the street holding up the sign that said the 11th province. So that was fun. So hustler, how about Dustin Nielsen? He checks into his hotel. He's in like the president's suite. Like, I think they didn't have another room for him because he showed up late because his flight was delayed, and he got the president's suite in the hotel. It was a massive. It had so many couches in it. Because I was on his show, but it was, I mean, this tournament had everything. And now we got to go back to the NHL.
I know. So over the next 30 minutes, we are going to get you ready for the NHL's return. We're going to have more. We're going to delve more into this tournament. Ryan Clark's going to join us from ESPN. Really looking forward to that. He did a great piece on ESPN.com talking about Connor Hellebuyck and where he fits in terms of all-time American goaltenders. Looking forward to talking to him. And then we will talk more as well. JT, get more perspective from you on the tournament. But the Jets are in St. Louis tonight, game 57 of the regular season. I'm looking for the same sort of intensity that we saw over the last week. No?
Yeah. I don't know. Like it was, I feel for the guys that play in that tournament and then have to get into this, because it's going to be like, it was, the play was, they did the game all the justice in the world, right? It was our game on the ice, and they were so good. And I'm seeing in the comments, Connor Hellebuyck could not make that save. I don't understand how the United States played as well as they did, and then they leave the best player in the game wide open in the slot. And then, I think there was there were questions about Connor Hellebuyck in big games. He answered all of them, in my opinion. There's no way he makes that stop. Nobody makes that save on that one. And I think he answered a lot of critique that he had coming into that tournament. And it only bodes well, because I think he's an even more confident goaltender than he was before he went to Four Nations. And that is fantastic news for the Winnipeg Jets.
Absolutely. Let's give you a reminder, though, of where things left off, because it feels like it has been a couple of weeks, obviously, since the Jets last played. The Jets come into tonight's game on an 8-game winning streak, as some of you have pointed out. I think Huss pointed out, going for 9 here tonight. NHL leading 81 points, with Washington right behind them at 80. They have a 9-point lead over Dallas in the Central Division standings, 11 points over Minnesota. 26 games left on the regular season schedule, 15 of them on the road. We've got a number of point streaks going on right now, including Alex Iafallo, Vlad Namestnikov, which some Namestnikov news that we will get to momentarily. And then as well, Scheifele, third in goals in the league with 31, 1 goal to pass Kovalchuk for most goals in franchise history. So just in case you need some of a reminder as to where things are. But today marks the return of the captain, Adam Lowry. No pressure on him, with the team having won all 8 games that he was out of the lineup.
Did you talk about that yesterday, a couple of days ago, about how he
and Morgan Barron having to discuss the fact that when they were up in the press box about how this team continues to roll even without them.
It's like maybe they don't need us.
Right, exactly. And that was such a big question that we had when Adam left the lineup and was injured, as how are they going to be able to handle not having him in there, about people having to step up in his absence, and they certainly did. And then, of course, we're able to continue to grab the wins. No Connor Hellebuyck for tonight's game. No Josh Morrissey as well. Kyle Connor did want to play, though, so he will be in St. Louis. So what came out of this morning in St. Louis? It was an optional skate. So the big question that remains as to who's going to be on the blue line in terms of filling in with Morrissey not there and him having come back to Winnipeg. Will it be Ville Heinola that draws in? Will it be Hayden Fleury? What's going to happen? So we'll have to wait for warm-ups at 5:30 to be able to find out. Mitchell Clinton, always great with the lines. So someone that you definitely want to watch. But The news out of St. Louis this morning, thankfully something, because I was talking to a couple of the guys that were in St. Louis and they said there was not much going on because of the optional skates, both for the Blues and the Jets. But then the news came down, and great news that Vlad Namestnikov signed a 2-year extension. It was announced this morning.
Yeah, great news for Vlad Namestnikov, and just one of the many key players the Jets have that we're going to be an unrestricted free agent. We don't need to get into the other guys right now, but in the meantime, Vlad Namestnikov signed to an extension. Great news, $3 million per season. The AAV have to listen. Anybody that wants to remember, Rick Bowness saying the people that are playing for the Winnipeg Jets want to be in Winnipeg, and that is no different for Vladislav Namestnikov. Here he is with a comment about the extension.
It was good. I love Winnipeg. Ever since I got here, loved every second of it. So, wanted to get something done, and it was fairly quick. So happy we can get something done.
And what was it about Winnipeg that you felt like is a real fit for you?
Just the guys, the way they treat you here in Winnipeg. Everyone's so nice to you, and it just feels like a family. And I think it's a very special group, and that can do some special things.
Yeah, obviously. Having a guy like that you've been able to coach for a few years. I've got some history with him going back to New York. Just a real pro that comes to play every night, and guy's got lots of experience. He's filled some big holes for us in the last couple of years. Obviously this full year playing up in that second line and finding the chemistry with Ehlers and Perfetti has been certainly helped us an awful lot, and real happy for Vladdy.
Listen, that's another thing too that was unfortunate about the Jets going on the break, is the second line was really humming along, right? And there's a lot of conversation about, will the Jets add a second center? I think Vladislav Namestnikov has taken the initiative and has played solid, and that second line is really producing. And Cole Perfetti is playing some of his best hockey probably as a member of the Winnipeg Jets. So as great as it was for the players to have that break, and a lot of guys needed it, it's almost unfortunate because they're playing so well, and so many players were playing well heading into this one. But exciting news that Vladislav Namestnikov is going to be a Jet for a while longer. Yeah,
absolutely. I think you and I have both spoken numerous times on this show about how much we enjoy having him around with the great. Not only is he able to move up and down throughout the lineup and be utilized in a variety of different ways, but just again, from people that have to speak to players on a regular basis. He gives thoughtful answers. He's just a great guy to have in the room. So great to be able to see him stick around for another couple of years. Looking forward to that. But you mentioned the chemistry that they had, and that was one of the questions that people had going into the break. With the success that the Jets have been having, how do you continue that over? Did it almost come, at an unfortunate time because they were rolling? So for you, JT, what are you watching for tonight as they get back onto the ice?
Well, I think one of the lowest hanging fruits on this one is how motivated Kyle Connor will be playing tonight after being a healthy scratch for the final game for the United States and Canada. So, and I also you've had this break. How long does it take to everybody get their game legs underneath them? I know the Jets have been skating, I believe, since Wednesday. Yeah. Probably the reason why they took the option this morning, because they've already had 3 practices. So I'm curious to see how long it takes everybody to get going again. So clearly you're a confident group, and as you should be. You have a divisional rival here on a Saturday night. You're not going to get the rematch of the 2 goaltenders from the Four Nation final. That's for sure. I'm sure lots of people are looking forward to that. But I just think the pace will be interesting early on. You're going to have a lot of fresh players, but how crisp is everything going to be? It would be hard to – it's unfair to expect them to be playing as well connected as they were before the break, but I don't think it will take very long.
Oh, well, I mean, look at the technical issues you and I have already had this morning with
yes.
something. So how long is it going to take us to get back?
Cirque du Soleil kind of screwed us over too. If we were in our normal studio, we would not have any problem.
It's true. Yeah. If it's not Elsa, it's Cirque. I
Yeah.
tell you, just constantly getting kicked out. You mentioned that it's not going to be a rematch of the Four Nations championship game tonight. No Jordan Binnington in net for the Blues. It will be Winnipeg Joel Hofer who gets the starts. He got the win. If you remember the last time these two teams played in December in Winnipeg, he stopped 22, maybe of the 23 shots that he faced for the Blues win. This is the 3rd time this season that these two teams have met. The road team has won each of the games so far, so we will see whether or not that continues. Colton Parayko will play this evening. He'll be back in the lineup. And for this Blues team, this is such a quick road trip for the Jets. They've got the one game here in St. Louis, then they come home, they play against San Jose on Monday, and then they head back out on the road for a couple. But this is a St. Louis team that I think a lot of people are going to be watching over these next couple of weeks. You know that there's going to be endless discussion about the trade deadline that is coming up on March 7th, what's going to happen across the league. But I think the Blues could be one of those interesting teams too, with what general manager Doug Armstrong might be doing. And we hear a lot about potentially some of their core players potentially being up for movement.
Doug Armstrong has never been afraid to make moves. If he doesn't think the team is going to, you go back to the Paul Stastny trade back in 2018, the Blues were like on the cusp of making the playoffs, but he makes the executive decision, like, what are we going to, if we get in, are we going to be able to do anything? So he makes a smart trade and sends Paul Stastny here for the 2018 playoff run. And of course, we all know how that worked out extremely well. So St. Louis, Nashville, another team in the Central Division, everybody's going to keep an eye on. There's lots of key players. I heard Craig Button on Hustler's show talking about, the Jets should target Ryan O'Reilly, who has a ton of playoff experience. But I'm just thinking how expensive that would be. Like, if you think, and then there's also the conversation about Mikko Rantanen could be a rental player. I heard Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast yesterday with Kyle Bukauskas. Could you imagine how many people would go after Mikko Rantanen as a rental if it is made available by the Carolina Hurricanes? That would be crazy.
Well, especially because of the way once that trade happened from Colorado, and if you remember, it was that 3-team trade with Chicago too. So you're not looking at Mikko Rantanen's full contract that's left either in terms of this season. It's going to be fascinating what happens over the next little bit, and obviously waiting to see what could happen with the Jets. And you and I will talk about it a lot. I think there would be after today, 3, maybe 5 games left before the trade deadline for the Jets. So you and I will be inevitably discussing a lot about what could happen and the speculation that will continue to rev up as to what Kevin Cheveldayoff might do. Because I think it's a fine line when you look at a team like this. You want to add pieces, and everybody always wants to land that big fish and have them come in. But we often see too that doesn't always equate into postseason success. And this is a room that has been working really well right now. These are lines that have had chemistry. So it'll be interesting to see the approach that he takes as well for this.
One thing I did, I did love whenever I would post that Josh Morrissey was paired with Colton Parayko, and everybody's like, future Jet. I'm like, I don't think, I honestly, and I love everybody, I don't think Colton Parayko is going anywhere, because watching him play at that tournament, that would be extremely expensive to bring him over if the Blues had any interest. And I don't think they have any interest in moving him because of the way he has played this year, certainly to earn the right to go to the Four Nations tournament, and then of course how well he played at the tournament as well. So I would love to see the guy in a Jets jersey. There's no question about that, but it'd be very, very expensive to bring him here.
Yeah, I always loved the idea. I mean, we always talk about that idea of bringing in Western Canadian players onto the team. So yeah, but certainly it'll be interesting to see the route that they go. We are waiting. Ryan Clark's going to join us shortly to discuss Connor Hellebuck and a little bit more about Four Nations. But let's switch our attention just quickly back to that, JT. We mentioned with Kyle Connor being scratched, and you look, okay, so he hadn't done a lot in the games that he was in. He was averaging just under 12 and a half minutes a game, including just 8.5 minutes in that game against Canada. But when you look across social media platforms for media across the league, both national and ones that cover both specific markets, I think people were shocked to see that Kyle Connor in a game of that magnitude, with the firepower that he possesses, that they wouldn't elect to put him in the lineup. I think the only thing you can hope now is that, much like we discussed how Mark Scheifele seemed incredibly motivated not being named to the Canadian team back at the beginning of December, and you look at the production he's had since then, that it could bode well if this gives a chip on the shoulder to Kyle Connor.
Yeah, and so it's too. I didn't say anything about it because I work for the team, so I felt bad, and I'm like, okay, why isn't Kyle Connor playing? But then you feel better about how you're feeling about it. I'm sitting there going, am I drinking the Jets Kool-Aid and he should be playing? But then you see Pierre LeBrun, Mike Russo from The Athletic who covers the Minnesota Wild and sees, he sees Kyle Connor all the time. They were all in questioning that decision. So I saw Kyle after the morning skate on Thursday, did not look happy. I could understand why.
Mhm.
But I mean, this is what happens when a team doesn't win. You all of a sudden start questioning the decisions made by management and the coaching staff in that situation. So somebody who was also at the Four Nations Face-Off and wrote a tremendous article, as he always does, is Ryan Clark, who joins us now from Seattle. Ryan, how was the trip home and how are you doing?
For starters, I want to say I appreciate being on the Sara Lesky show. As we all know, Sarah's a big deal. The first time I met Sarah,
The Sara Lesky show.
First time I met Sarah, I was like, "Hi, I'm right." She's like, "I know who you are. The question is, do you know who I am? And if you know who I am, why are you talking?" And all right, I'm just gonna go away and never come back. She's like,
You know what? You started off so strong, Ryan, and then you just filled it with lies. Nothing but lies.
That's why I said it, because no one would believe it, because everyone knows like you're the nicest human being on the face of the earth. No, things are good. The flight back was great. It was just funny because usually you're the one who's like, I flew from ocean to ocean, but everyone else is like, I went through planes, trains, and automobiles, and even one reporter got stuck in an elevator trying to get to Boston. So by comparison, travel was good. I hope travel getting back for you was good. It seems like it is, because I see the poppy in the background.
Yes. Very important. It's always there. It's always hanging over my left shoulder. Good eyes by you. We were just talking. I wanted a quick thought from you before we get into your article you wrote about Connor Hellebuck. Just, was it fair critique by most of the media members at Four Nations to not have Kyle Connor in the lineup against Canada in the championship game, in your opinion?
It absolutely is, just because, look, with Kyle Connor, I think a lot of us have been saying the same thing. If Kyle Connor's healthy, ... he's one of the most dangerous scorers in the game. Like, you're talking about someone, and I mean this with no disrespect whatsoever, like, he's not talked about enough.
Right.
Like, if Kyle Connor were a Detroit Red Wing or a New York Ranger, he'd be unavoidable. And when you're thinking about a game in which goals are at a premium, finishing is at its most important, there is a conversation to be had about it. But what makes it a more even interesting discussion is it's the usage of Kreider.
Right.
It's the fact that you knew that, hey, you had some guys that maybe weren't going to be at 100%. And so to be able to have those players that you know can score goals, which is what Kyle Connor does just about as well as anyone, it's a fair question to ask, especially when those two games were decided by mistakes. And for the many things you can say about Kyle Connor, if there is one thing he does just as well as anyone, it's this. He capitalizes on mistakes like a second grader in a spelling test.
Well said.
I have to say, Ryan, that going into the tournament, I fully admit that I was one of those skeptics of it, where JT from the beginning said he could not wait to go. I said, I'm so glad you want to go because I want no part of this. And then I had FOMO because everybody was there. You miss seeing and catching up with everyone, but then just obviously the level of play and the intensity that was brought to it from the standpoint of the US and them trying to gain more fans, trying to gain more of that market share in there. What do you think the Four Nations was able to accomplish in its 2 weeks?
It was immense, just because the point I've been making to a lot of people is, if there's one thing Americans love more than America, it's the romanticization of America being an underdog in something. And when you look at men's hockey, and I want to make that very clear, because when it comes to women's hockey, like, it's the US, it's Canada, and then everybody else is playing for third. But in men's hockey, it's not always been that way. And so with this being one of the last great sporting frontiers where the United States is either not the best, the outright best, or pre-tournament, you could say consistently one of the best, it's something that meant a lot in a way that, there were different people who said, okay, this isn't the Olympics. We know the appetite for the World Championships among the United States. Will people really care? And then after that first Canada-US game, people who do not watch hockey were talking about hockey.
Yeah.
On my flight from Seattle to Boston, people, even on an early morning flight going to Boston, were talking about that game and what it meant. And even now, it's like I've had friends texting me like, Stephen A. Smith is talking about hockey. And it's like, who would have ever thought that? It's just now a matter of like, can you take the growth of this and go on from it? Because like the challenge of the way it works in the United States versus Canada is Canada, it's the national sport. Like it's the number one sport that the majority of the athletes that you get, the best athletes in that country, the majority are going to go play hockey. Now, of course, we're seeing a change with people like SGA, Jonathan David, FAA, this and that. It feels nice to be able to say these names and people not be like, what are those? Whereas if you two are like, we know who they are, so hooray. But whereas if in the States, like you have really good athletes that play hockey, but like the best athletes don't. So if you're the US, you're the NHL, you're trying to do whatever you can to push this. And this is a great way to get it going, because if this is the interest just for a 4-team tournament in Boston and Montreal, what's it going to be like in the Olympics where everyone is going to be watching? And not just the Olympics, but the Winter Olympics where, like, yes, they're big in the US, but the summer is the draw. If this can be the thing that gets people caring about the Winter Olympics even more, that's immense for many reasons.
You wrote a great article on Connor Hellebuck and his stature amongst all-time greats in between the pipes from an American perspective. I just wanted to ask you quickly before we fully get into the article is just what Connor Hellebuck did to raise his profile at the Four Nations.
I think he showed that he can continue to play and win in close games. I think that's always going to be the question with Connor, is just going to be like, okay, can he win the big series? Can he win the big game? You saw in that first game, he's one of the biggest reasons the United States won. You saw in that second game, he's one of the reasons they were able to get to overtime. And like Mike Sullivan said, look, if it's not for an icing, maybe this is a different conversation and a different outcome, but there's the icing and then the best player on the planet gets space. And we know how that movie ends. But for the way that he performed, it feels like he did go away in terms of showing people like this is why he belongs in this conversation.
When you look at your article that you did, Ryan, looking at where he belongs in that conversation, give us an idea. I mean, we obviously want everyone to go to ESPN.com and be able to check it out and read it for themselves. But what was your biggest takeaway, having spoken to some of the greatest American goaltenders that the game has seen?
That, first of all, there was a respect and appreciation amongst all of them for where the position has gone. Because when you talk to like a Ryan Miller or Tim Thomas, they're telling you about how when they were growing up, the American goalie dynamic isn't what it is now. Whereas if now you have a Hellebuck, an Ottinger, a Swayman, a Dimko, a Dustin Wolf, where like if you're a young American kid, you can see like, okay, we have some of the best going. Whereas if when they were growing up, it's these guys who were playing in the Olympics that didn't even get to 30 NHL games or even one NHL game in some instances. But when it came to talking about Connor specifically, they all just talked about how he checks every box of being a prototype, but they also kept coming back to this, like, while winning a cup helps, like it is still a team game. Like if this was tennis, where it's solely on Connor Hellebuck, they're like, yeah, you can't really be an all-time great in something like tennis or golf without winning at least one or two majors. But they're like, for something like this, he has been the prototypical goalie. He's on pace to win his third Vezina, and if he does, it's the only time an American has ever had three. And he's getting into that conversation with Hasek and Waugh and whatnot. And it's like, so can you really pin the lack of a cup at his feet? Because people said, like, you look at Ryan Miller, you look at Roberto Luongo, like, do they lose their all-time great status because of this? Now, there's a difference because with Ryan Miller, like, there's been a lot of great American goalies, whereas if Roberto Luongo, and for as amazing as his career was, like, okay, your choices are him, Waugh, Brodeur, Jacques Plante, Ken Dryden. There's nothing wrong with being fifth place in that conversation.
Yeah.
And so that's just the fundamental difference.
That's great. It must have been fun accumulating and talking to all the American great goaltenders, Ryan. Listen, again, go to ESPN.com. Ryan's article sitting right there. It is so good. It's like, I love, like we hear all the time here, but it's nice to hear that from Ryan Miller and from Jonathan Quick and Mike Richter, the respect for Connor Hellebuck. That makes it even better. So appreciate you penning that article. And it was really great to see you in Boston.
Likewise.
And looking forward to see you down the road, man.
No, absolutely. Again, thank you so much for having me on the Sara Lesky Show. I mean, it's always amazing to be around such a visionary in the history of Canadian media. Hopefully the next time I see her, she won't be like, "Be gone, peasant." But now that I've exposed her, I'm probably going to get yelled at even more. No, seriously. Sara's the sweetest human being you ever meet. And Jamie, you know how much I love you. I will always make all the time in the world for you.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much for having me.
All you're doing is asking, like, you're just giving everybody in our chat group something more to work with, and they already have enough to work with when it comes to Sara. So appreciate you, buddy.
Hey, no problem, everyone. Take care.
Look forward to seeing you soon, Ryan.
See you, Ryan. Oh, I didn't mean to cut him off there. Ryan, apologize for that. I thought he was going to say
You
something else.
wouldn't cut him off. I wouldn't
That's enough of that. We've heard enough about Sara. Oh my!
I wouldn't have cut Ryan off.
Did you listen? I feel like you were talking to him before he came on, not me. I was the one that said, "Ryan, come on the show," and he's like feeding you the whole time. That's amazing. Amazing.
He's such a good guy. Really, though, people should go and find his article on ESPN.com, or you can go to his profile on X, and it's linked there as well. So it is a very good read and very good insight from a number of the best U.S. goaltenders that the game has seen. Yes.
Do you want to run your Comrie?
You know what? Sure. Just as we quickly, speaking of goaltenders,
he is the starting goaltender.
He is the starting goaltender for tonight. Eric Comrie gets the start. And, something that I'm hoping you and I can talk about in the future as well. He's had some really great insights being Comrie recently. I mean, he's humorous as ever when discussing how he was very conflicted in that, obviously wants to support one of his closest friends in Helly, but then also wanting Canada to be able to win. But he had some really great comments this week about some of the biggest takeaways from Four Nations about how it could grow the sport. And he talked about needing to get the cost of the sport down. And goalie equipment these days, he said, it's ridiculous how expensive it is. It kind of grosses me out thinking how hard it is for kids to play this game. So I hope they can make a program where there's more opportunity for kids to play. So he said, there's so many that have watched the game now in the US that never did before. And so now it's how can you get them into hockey, and hopefully being able at some point to remove some of those financial barriers that we know can exist with the sport, and especially, at any point in time, but especially when you look at something like the goaltending position. But that's a bigger conversation for another day. We are getting close to wrapping up, but Eric Comrie was also our newest home ice. It's a two-parter. Part one is out right now. And here's a look. It's
not surprising that's two parts from.
You know what? I said to them right away, we cannot just do one part with Eric Comrie because, in fact, we could probably do 8. As you know from having had him on Ground Control, just how incredibly entertaining he is. But here is part one. Here's just a quick glimpse of what you can expect with home ice and Eric Comrie. What does a bad day for Eric Comrie look like?
Honestly, no. I don't have many bad days. Like a bad day for me, like I wake up, and it's funny, I'm pretty good emotionally aware, and I'm like, I go to Flats in the morning and say, Flats, I'm a little grumpy today, just a heads up. I'm like, okay, Coms, thank you. So I'm pretty aware of when I'm a little grumpy.
I feel like grumpy for you is not.
And grumpy for me is not that grumpy. No, but like I can be a little bit like, I don't know. When I lose, I'm pretty angry. If I have a competition or something like that, I'm not happy. Shite brought his own balls. He was setting up his own balls. They gave me the limited flight balls. I had no chance. Yeah.
So it is out right now on YouTube, on the Winnipeg Jets website. You can hear, I'm sure, my dog going in the background right now. But all over. He's great. Part 1, part 2 will be released. I see some people asking, when will part 2 come out? We're hoping that it will be out at the end of this upcoming week, but make sure you check out part 1. It's out right now.
Well done, Orlesky.
Right.
Well done.
Hey, it is great to have you back, JT. It is great to have all of you back in the chat as well. We are looking forward to, Scott Arneal has talked about this run now, coming back from the Four Nations break to get them to game 83 and beyond. You and I are going to be there for all of it, of course, and we hope that all of you are going to continue to join us each and every game day for check-in, 12:30 Central tonight. And your big change, we're waiting to see who draws in on the blue line with no Josh Morrissey since he came back to Winnipeg, but it should be a good one tonight. It'll just be great to be able to get back into the groove again as the Winnipeg Jets are in St. Louis for their one game before coming home and facing San Jose on Monday.
I don't understand why Arnie has to give us all these question marks. First game back, and he's like, I'm not going to give you guys the lineup. What's been gone? Why would he tell Sara and Jamie the lineup?
There to give him a hard time.
Why would he help us?
Don't forget, it is a 6 o'clock start tonight. The game is on Sportsnet. You can listen to it, as always, on CJOB 97.5 as well. And I will see you, my friend, later on. But it's great to have all of you back in the chat. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will see you all on Monday.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for checking in.